second episode of Mad, Bad and Downright Strange Showcase, where I invite bloggers, filmmakers and fellow film junkies to help me work through the 1001 film introduction to cult and obscure cinema, which is the Mad, Bad and Downright Strange list. As always, I'm your host Elwood Jones of From the Depths of DVD Hell, and joining me in the studio this evening is the writer, director and producer Bachmann, Bachmann, I do apologise, who will be discussing his follow-up to the critically acclaimed comedy musical Miracle on Metal Street, which is now set to follow with the comedy horror Party Slashers.
Can't you guys knock?
What the fuck is going on here?
Oh my god. Pants.
Guys, he's coming. Chug this, okay?
Wait, what? No, energy drinks are bad for you.
We need to enrage him. You need to fuck this guy up.
Just because I'm Asian doesn't mean I can fight.
You're president of the Martial Arts Club.
Whatever. I train for personal growth, not for kicking people's asses.
Welcome to the show, Carl. Thank you for joining me this evening.
Thank you for having me, Elwood.
As I said, the new film that you're currently trying to raise money for via Kickstarter is called Party Slashers. For those of you who aren't aware of the film, what would you want to just tell us a little bit about what the film's about?
Sure. Okay, so Party Slashers is a horror comedy about a Mr. Popular wannabe who has to team up with his ex-best friend, his introverted ex-best friend, for survival during a high school Halloween party crashed by undead mass murderers whom were accidentally summoned during a Dungeons and Dragons game.
So I'm right in saying this is a comedy horror. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
As I like the idea that there's someone through a Dungeons and Dragons game. I think that's just like a really unique plot device. I know whenever I played Dungeons and Dragons school, the only magical thing it did was to make girls disappear. But it's as I said, it's nice to have an original idea, especially for an independent horror where the market seems to be very sort of flooded with either Blair Witch knockoffs or zombie movies.
Sure.
So when obviously it came through your email about the Kickstarter campaign, it certainly had my interest right from the start. And then obviously we've had the fake trailer. Sorry, not the fake trailer, the trailer, should I say, which you obviously put up with the Kickstarter campaign. And I have to say that when looking at the material, it reminded me somewhere between the film Murder Party and the series Todd and the Book of Pure Evil. It's got that sort of really sort of laid back, sort of chaotic humor to it. And it seems like a real sort of interesting cast of characters that you've sort of assembled here. Was the idea always to go for like a wide group, or did it sort of just come naturally as part of the writing process?
Yes, so I wanted a slew of characters with very distinct personalities because one problem I have with a lot of horror movies is that you have these cardboard cutout of characters, very two-dimensional, no personality whatsoever. And I can't really connect with anybody, and I want to see them die. I feel like that's the only satisfying thing that audiences get from the protagonist, is that they die because they're annoying or whatnot. So I wanted to create characters that people could actually root for and, were actually worried about their survival.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly achieved that. I mean, if we just looking at the main sort of group there, I think this is probably the first time I've seen someone in steampunk in a horror film.
Yes. I was recently exposed to that culture, and I think it's fantastic, the costumes they come up with.
It is. It's certainly an interesting thing, and it's certainly gaining in popularity. Certainly here in the UK, we see a lot more people sort of really getting into it, and it's not just at the conventions. You actually see people out and about in their old steampunk gear, which is pretty cool to see. I mean, is that a scene that you're a particular fan of, or is it just like a nice aesthetic to include?
No, so I'm also really into making costumes. I typically do during Halloween, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to set this during Halloween, is so I could put everybody into crazy costumes, jazz it up a little bit. And I've attended a couple of conventions actually with Miracle on Metal Street, and there always seems to be a population there completely dressed in steampunk costumes, and I'm always amazed at the craftsmanship that goes into some of these costumes. And I wanted to translate that into this scene that you saw. The budget was very small, though, and steampunk costumes, they can get pretty pricey.
Yeah, because there's a lot of retro sort of gear, and it's sort of that nice combination of where you've got that sort of industrial side combined with something sort of very traditional Victorian style.
Yeah.
And it's just nice the way that the community is like constantly evolving itself. It is probably one of the more unique communities out there.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see it being represented there. I mean, what was your main sort of inspiration when it came to creating party slashers?
Oh, well, a lot of people like to ask if it's a movie that had me want to create this, but no, I kind of just wanted to derive something from my childhood, which is a time period in my life where I was thoroughly unprepared for whatever was being presented and making colossal mistakes along the way. And I wanted to express that through these characters. I don't consider high school students, the smartest on their feet. And I figured that I could even, make things even worse, throw gasoline on the fire by having them duke it out with a bunch of undead killers whom they're completely unprepared for. No self-defense skills or, weapons presented or anything.
I mean, again, with the test footage that you've posted on the Kickstarter page, you have got that great scene where you've got the Asian kid who's dressed as the Incredible Hulk, and the fact that their idea to actually defeat the guy coming in is to get him hopped up on energy drinks and then inject him with adrenaline. But it's an absolutely fascinating scene, not only because obviously the fact that it's the Asian is dressed as the Incredible Hulk, and he's not particularly bulked up. He's just, I love the fact that he's sort of like, oh, you think just because I'm Asian that I'm going to be good at martial arts? And it's like, well, you're the head of the martial arts society. And I think it is a very sort of natural humor. Would you say that you're using within the film?
Natural humor in terms of
it's in that you're sort of like going for sort of more sort of like naturalistic sort of dialogue rather than just using more sort of like punchline sort of based humor, really.
Yes, that's correct. That's the type of humor that I enjoy.
I mean, again, was there any sort of, when you came to obviously the writing process, I mean, were there other films or any sort of where that you sort of drew the inspiration from, or was it just purely just from your sort of school days that you're sort of drawing the inspiration from when it came to the writing process?
Well, in terms of the humor in the writing process, a lot of the comedy that I derived this from was actually a couple of things. A lot of Judd Apatow movies. I really like the humor in there. Superbad, Knocked Up, films like that. And also the humor in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, that television show.
I've only just started getting into that. We've got it on Netflix over here in the UK. And it's one of those shows that is slowly sort of gaining its sort of following via Netflix. But again, that's a really sort of chaotic humor. And it seems to be like constantly like trying to find new and unique ways to offend everybody.
Sure, yes, that's the central theme in that show. And if you're just starting to watch it, just wait. When you get in the later seasons, the humor gets even more chaotic, and these characters become even more broken down versions of themselves.
I know. The one I saw the other day, they were at an abortion clinic protest, and at one point they actually changed sides because there's more hot chicks on the other side. And I was just thinking, but it is so clever again the way that they do it. Is because it's not just sort of offensive for being the way offensive. There is some sort of brains behind it. I mean, you mentioned Judd Apatow. I mean, was there any? Were you sort of like a fan of his work, obviously going into this, or is it more as you sort of like coming into the sort of writing it, you've sort of looked to the way he constructs his films and adapts it your style to sort of suit it?
Well, his sense of humor just was a breath of fresh air from the comedy that we were used to in the 90s. The slapstick humor we'd see in movies like Dumb and Dumber and that kind of stuff. And I just felt like it was a little bit of an evolution in the comedy that we're used to today. And so that's what I used in this project a little bit. But I wanted to put, sort of a unique element in it. But there's definitely a lot of influence from those sets of movies. I didn't write the script saying, like, I want it to be exactly like Judd Apatow humor or anything like that.
No.
But sort of that style, with naturalist humor, very self-centered, selfish characters who, yeah.
I think it's certainly evident. I mean, when you look at the way that the characters react, it is very much like you would expect teenagers to act. It's not this sort of 40-year-old impression of how teenagers would act and how they would talk, where they're sort of just coming out with witty little dialogue things, sort of like in Juno, which always detracted me the fact that these kids seem a lot smarter than you would expect them to be. And certainly look at the test footage, how they react in that sort of blind panic is how I would expect teenagers to react. So again, it's nice to see that sort of thing. And again, you haven't gone just for sort of like the jock, the slut, the nerdy group. Your group, it is a sort of very diverse group.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel that when you were writing this, that these were sort of like, there were certain sort of stereotypes of horror writing that you didn't want to fall into, like having those set sort of character archetypes?
Yeah, I wanted to be a little bit more unique than that. I feel like the the typical view of the jock and the nerd and all that, I feel like these characters they're just overdone. They're not natural. So I wanted to put more of a unique element on these characters, and I wanted to express that these characters are actually pretty similar deep down inside. They're going their own paths, but you'll see throughout the movie that they realize they have more in common with each other than they think.
I mean, obviously this is your second film now, with the first film being Miracle on Metal Street.
Yes.
Would you say the two are comparable, or would you say this is sort of an exploration of a different sort of genre for yourself?
In terms of comparing them, I would say the level of absurdity and crassness is pretty similar. What I really like about the notion of horror comedy is that the level of absurdity that you put in these films is what helps make them entertain them. It makes people want to watch this stuff, just see how crazy things get. And to me, it's really a reflection of what I encounter in everyday life. I see things every day. I read news headlines, current world events that just scream absurdity to me in all sorts of fashion. And I like to satirize it and make fun of it, through the works of art that I create.
I mean, obviously with the horror genre on a whole at the moment, certainly with the stigma from around DTV releases now being pretty much removed, do you feel that the horror market has now got to the point where it's sort of oversaturated, or do you think there's still sort of life and creativity that can be found within the genre?
Within the genre of horror?
Within the genre of horror, certainly. I mean, do you feel that
Sure.
it's now it's a genre that's sort of getting very overworked, or do you think there's still sort of originality to be found there?
It is. The conditions for movie making these days make it so many other filmmakers can now make movies. The technology has just gotten so much cheaper and better that everybody's making movies, and a lot of people go towards the horror genre, I feel like, because it tends to be very budget friendly. And horror films, I feel like, are one of the few genres that translate internationally. I feel like audiences from all different countries and cultures can sort of relate these type of movies, compared to a romantic comedy or something like that. And so what's that?
Yeah, so please go on there.
Yes, it becomes, I feel like, a very lucrative genre to go for in the beginning. And a lot of people, I feel like, go into it just recycling things that have been done in the past that are, tried and true. You're seeing a lot of these found footage movies, I feel like, because, well, obviously it works in some regards, in Blair Witch it worked beautifully. But I think what also makes it attractive is that it's easy to film the movie very fast, very quickly. and that's another lucrative option for people. So a lot of producers, they want horror films in the found footage format, but I think audiences are getting a little bit too sophisticated for it, and they're getting tired of it to a degree.
I think the found footage sort of genre is a very, very difficult one to do. Obviously, you mentioned Blair Witch, which is sort of the granddaddy of the found footage. I could, some may argue, like the last broadcast came first, but I would say certainly Blair Witch was more influential. And the problem I find that is you have so many now of these found footage movies, and it's so hard to get into the story because you have got that camera that's just constantly shaking around, so you can't focus on anything. But as you said, they're very cheap movies to make. And again, this is another reason what appealed to me when I got the email about Party Slashers is the fact it is again doing something different. It's not another paranormal romance. It's not another zombie movie, and it thankfully is not another found footage movie. Because again, it's especially with the DTV genre, you just have so many of those movies coming through. I mean, do you find it's harder, obviously, to pitch sort of like a more sort of straightforward horror movie that doesn't have that sort of gimmick attached to it, or do you feel that a film will stand on its own sort of merits regardless of the style it's being shot in?
Yeah, honestly, I think that content is king, and if you can create a movie without the found footage, as long as the story is there, and as long as the characters are something people can root for, yes, the movie can stand on its own 2 feet. I feel like you said, the market is oversaturated with these found footage films that it almost, I feel like, would become a breath of fresh air to see something that goes against those saturated elements,
Yeah, certainly. And again, is it digital that you're shooting the film in?
Yes, it is digital. It'd be nice to shoot film, but it's extremely expensive format to film with.
I mean, certainly at the moment there is that ongoing argument between the advantages of shooting on film and the advantages of shooting on digital. It was most prominently sort of covered in the documentary Side by Side, which for myself is probably one of the greatest sort of discussion pieces that you can find on it, just purely because
I've seen that too. Great.
I mean, do you have a preferred sort of format that you would prefer shooting? I mean, would you ideally prefer shooting film, or do you find digital sort of a more flexible sort of format to shoot in?
I think George Lucas said this too. It's just another tool in the filmmaker's toolkit. I think you have to ask yourself, whenever you're filming a movie, you got to say, what's going to support the story? Is it something where like only film is going to support the story? Like if I shoot this thing digitally, is the story going to lose a piece of its soul that would have been captured with film? And honestly, I don't buy that. I think there are a few filmmakers there that think digital looks cheap, or it's just Quentin Tarantino's opinion. It's just TV to him. I don't agree with that. I think, the aesthetic that digital cameras are producing or creating is extremely stunning. And a lot of the times, I feel like when you're showing this to audiences, I don't think they'll even be able to tell the difference between film and digital.
I think it's more something that's sort of like the more sort of the film junkies and the sort of the film school sort of kids are the ones who sort of notice the difference between film and obviously what's been shot in digital. Certainly with the larger production, the larger sort of budgety productions, it's harder to tell the difference. I know Tarantino said that as soon as that they stop making movies on film that he's going to retire, which obviously opens up a whole wave of new possibilities for that. And again, this is probably why he's been so sort of active on promoting his purchase of the New Beverly. Obviously, but as you said before, I think if the film is strong enough, it will hold up no matter what format you shoot it under. Again, just with obviously shooting on a budget, the cast, from what I can tell, they're all largely unknown actors. Would you say that are they all sort of first time sort of performers here, or are they just sort of more
No,
more
actually,
independent scene?
believe it or not, they're actually a majority of them are part of the Screen Actors Guild. One of them is actually a regular performer with the Upright Citizens Brigade. That'll be Jake Regal, the guy who plays Russell. And then there is Kaylee Bryant, who plays Heather. She is in a couple of Disney television shows. And, I'm not going to lie and say, yeah, they're huge A-list actors that have been on all sorts of stuff, but they are a group of professionals who completely blew me away during the casting process, and that's why I chose them.
Because that's again this the other with obviously the lower budget films. I mean, there's always that sort of way that the filmmaker is just obviously going to cast their friends. So it's interesting the fact that you've actually gone with Screen Actors Guild certified actors. I mean, again, there is that sort of hunger there. Do you find that with the obviously the lesser known actors are sort of more hungry for it than if you're using a bigger named actor?
Yes, so a lot of advice that I hear is that if you're going to do low budget, there's you shouldn't even do Screen Actors Guild. You should just use your there's all kinds of talent that are not attached to the guild that are perfectly worthy for these parts, but I was talking to my casting director, and he was telling me about the new media contract, which is, the way SAG sets it up is based on your budget. That determines what contract you sign with them. But if you're going to create a film that's going to go up on the internet or YouTube or something like that first, you can sign up with a separate agreement, which is new media, and that is way more budget friendly than the other agreements, and it also gives you access to SAG talent. And I went with it, and it was a great experience. It wasn't hard at all, very easy process, and the rates are negotiable with your actors. You don't have to follow a scale or anything, so it's perfect. It worked great for me.
And again, I have to obviously ask it with your budget. I'm guessing, are you going for just sort of old school effects, or are you going to combine it with CGI, or are you going more sort of a CGI sort of route?
I'm going to be very minimal with the CGI. I mean, I think there's some parts that the budget won't support practical effects, but I want to adhere to practical effects as much as I can. I have a few connections with the makeup department that can create me all sorts of severed heads, stuff like that, great makeup effects. So I'm going to exploit that and keep CGI to a minimal, and hopefully people don't notice.
I mean, I believe it's one of the perks is if you, by supporting the campaign, you can actually, you can be killed in the movie, or you can select someone to be killed?
That's correct. You can either nominate to have yourself decapitated in the film, or you can nominate a friend to get killed in the film. There's another option. The adopt a kill option allows you to name a character in the film after somebody you hate, and watch them meet their demise.
I think that's, again, this is the wonderful thing about Kickstarter, is that you do have that sense of involvement. It's not just the fact that you're handing over your money to, obviously, to sort of budget filmmakers, but the fact that you actually have that feeling of being involved. I mean, just obviously looking at the list of what you can get by pledging. I mean, if you pledge $5, that you actually get a copy of Miracle Metal Street.
That's correct.
And as you said, that as it goes down, obviously for the higher ones, it does actually get a lot more. There is some very interesting sort of perks, including you can have your own Grindhouse poster made.
That's correct. Yes. What I have people do is I'll have them fill out a questionnaire with some various questions to help me gauge on what kind of poster they would like, and use their answers as an inspiration to come up with a poster. And the first 3 backers, they were able to get their posters in advance, and so I created that for them. Somebody wanted to be a film noir guy, and he is terrified of dinosaurs. So I had him. His poster was him being the greatest film noir detective out there. He was going back in time to solve the great mystery of what happened to all the dinosaurs. So that type of thing. And it's in the format of a grindhouse poster. It looks kind of cheesy, cheap, but at the same time, it's wonderful to look at and very, goes against the grain of the current posters you see out there.
Yeah. I mean, certainly on the Kickstarter campaign, the example you give is Shark Zuka Soldier.
Yes.
Which is the film I really want to see now.
I know. I actually really want to see it too. I'm sure somebody's stealing my idea as we speak.
I mean, the tagline especially is like, in a world where there's mostly water, there's no shortage of ammunition.
Yes, that's. I came up with that on the spot. I was thinking of sort of badass, terrifying creatures and some sort of action hero, and it meshed into this. I have a very interesting thought process. I can't really track my thoughts myself, actually.
I think sharks are constantly especially with the DTV market, and the Asylum especially love their sharks.
Sure.
I think Sharkzooka is probably the one thing they haven't done yet. I mean, we've had Sharktopus and Sharkzilla, I think we've had.
Yep. Sharknado, too.
I've yet to see the second one. I saw the first one, which was quite enjoyable for an Asylum film.
Yeah.
I mean, are you a fan of the Asylum's mockbuster sort of format and their films?
No, I'm not really a fan, but I respect what they're doing. They're filling a void in a market, and they're doing it beautifully. They're always making a profit, all their films. The concepts are interesting, despite the production value that goes into them. But, there's people that want to see this stuff. I've actually been to the studio and met some of the guys there. Their CEO, he rides around in 80s style rollerblades, whenever he wants to make a copy of something or whatever. It's fantastic.
It's I mean, certainly, I mean, while for the most part they are basically Sci-Fi Channel filler, there is a certain sort of charm to them. I mean, do you find that obviously being sort of budget filmmaker that you're sort of lumped within the same group as the Asylum, that people sort of assume because you're making a film on a budget that it's going to be similar to those sort of Asylum movies?
Not necessarily. There's, I feel like there's low budget films that explore very serious subject matter. With a low budget, what's great about low budgets is you can get a lot more creative with your ideas. Low budget doesn't necessarily have to translate into cheap effects, cheesy plot lines and all that. It's not necessary.
I think certainly with, obviously you're going with humor and horror. Is it difficult to find that balance between horror and comedy? Because there's sort of two sort of opposite ends to an effect, and it always seems like something that's a difficult thing to get the balance of, and very few films actually manage it.
Right, yes. I've been doing a lot of research on the genre, and when it works beautifully, but, I feel like more often than not, it doesn't work. And I think it's all about finding that perfect balance between moments that are extremely hilarious to moments that are extremely horrific. And you have to find that balance. It has to, almost go in like a wave of some sort, to where people can decompress from a horrific moment with a moment of, hilarious antics, and vice versa. It's tough, though.
It's certainly tough. I mean, I think the one example that would spring to mind would be Shaun of the Dead, which I think you've mentioned on the page as being an inspiration. Again, there's parts of that where it's just a really great zombie movie, and there's parts where it's just a really great comedy. I mean, is it hard to sort of put in the humor elements without losing the scares?
Yes and no. Again, it's a very difficult question to ask. I think what a lot of filmmakers have to realize is that when they are creating a very horrific moment in the film, they can't insert the comedy during that moment. It's there's too much of a polarity to make it work, and almost I think it could cancel out the scene sometimes if you're trying to have a comedic moment at the same time of something that's supposed to be very scary, very horrific. So again, it's all about that balance.
I mean, certainly with the horror elements in the test footage that you have posted, there are some quite gruesome bits. I think there's an action figure that's gouging the monster's sort of eye. I mean, is the plan to obviously be high splatter, or is it just to have those sudden bursts of extreme gore?
Yeah, so I didn't want to do a CGI with the test scene, and the budget just didn't really support an extremely violent act, so I had to go easy there. But yes, there's going to be scenes of decapitation, people getting stabbed. There's a scene where somebody gets an M80 firecracker in their eye socket and their head explodes. All kinds of stuff like that.
That's what we like. We like exploding heads. If you can get an exploding head in the film, you're doing good.
There will be an exploding head. Yes, don't you worry.
And I mean, was there any sort of like restraints that you put upon yourself when obviously putting the film together, that there were certain lines you weren't going to cross with the film?
When writing the whole thing?
I mean, just in terms of that, there was like, in terms of certainly things like violence or nudity or gore, that you sort of had that point where you weren't going to obviously push it past that.
Yeah, okay, so I mean, I see in some horror films that people like is the gory aspect of it, and granted, yeah, you will see heads fly off and stuff like that, but I wanted to set a limit to it. I didn't want to, get it to the point of, say, like Cannibal Holocaust or, a Saw film or something like that. I wanted this to be a movie that wasn't just for horror fans. I wanted this to be a horror movie for people who don't particularly like only horror. I wanted it to bridge the gap between those two communities.
Certainly, I mean, certainly with a lot of modern horror, it does seem to be, we seem to now be in this sort of stage where the more gore and splatter seems to be the key thing that a lot of films go for, and I think it's really for films like Saw, which sort of sparked this. Whereas before, in sort of like the early 90s, we had films like Scream, which were a lot more subtle. Do you feel that films now are just sort of relying on sort of the splatter now to sort of get the scares, rather than actual sort of working on generating actual true scares?
I think shock value is something that's always been portrayed in film. Ever since the medium was created, people have been trying to create shocking things in films and use that as a selling point, I think. Like, skip the story altogether and just show things that are extremely shocking to the viewer. I mean, like I said, with Cannibal Holocaust, that's a good example. I can't think of any others off the top of my head, but, it's just something that's always been portrayed as either a marketing tool or just to get a certain emotion out of people. And there is a community of people that want to see this kind of stuff. They enjoy it, and I'm not saying they're weird or anything, but they like what they like.
It's within the sort of the genre community. There is obviously those who like films like The Human Centipede, which I couldn't stand. I don't see the appeal of obviously wanting to see people son ass to mouth.
Right.
But obviously, the people who got very excited about The Human Centipede, and when its sequel came along, which sort of again doubled it up, they were more than happy to sort of queue up to see that one. But
yes,
as you said, there's each their own.
They were very well aware of what they were doing when they created Human Centipede, and I'll admit I was actually guilty of watching that movie, skipping right to the scene with the centipede, just because I couldn't stand anybody in that movie. I didn't care about anybody. It was boring, and I skipped right to that scene. I was like, okay, this is what everybody's talking about. And I heard the sequel was pretty much just that scene expanded for however long the runtime was. So I was good. I didn't need that.
Yeah, I've yet to see the sequel. I've yet to hit that low point where I've got nothing to watch, where I've only got The Human Centipede 2 as my only viewing option.
Right, right. Well,
Hopefully, it won't be around anytime soon.
I'm still waiting for 3 and 4. I'm sure they'll come.
I know that I think the rumors I'm hearing about 3 is that it's 100 people, and I'm thinking, are there really 100 actors that desperate enough that they would appear in that film?
It will probably be 4 or 5 actors, and they'll CGI them. Just copy paste, copy paste, copy paste to get to 100 or whatever.
Yeah, he's not a filmmaker that I see. He's sort of like Uri Bowl. He's making films, but they're not of any sort of real sort of note, and it's kind of sort of takes away from the genre. It's sort of that filler, that sort of DTV sort of filler that sort of, I would say, waters down the genre on a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually nice, as I said, that you're obviously trying to take one back for the horror genre and actually give us something different again. Obviously, getting back to the film, do you have a favourite character within the film?
Favorite character? To be honest, actually, Angie is my favorite character. In the scene you saw, she comes off as, a huge bitch, but, it's really hard. It's a 5.5 minute scene. I have to introduce 7 characters, and it's really difficult in that time period, and people are only getting a snippet as to what their personalities are. But these characters are a lot more dynamic than what meets the eye, and I guess what I enjoy about Angie most is that she goes completely against the grain with any perception that people might have of either women or introverts or hipsters. She goes against all of that. She's a rebel to a certain degree, and I think people will like her a lot more once they see her in the feature.
Yeah, I mean, again, when you're obviously creating these characters, is there sort of this compulsion to obviously try and give an audience something that they haven't seen before, or is there sort of the inevitability that you're going to create certain characters which are that you sort of see in other horror sort of films?
I mean,
the only reason I ask is just because it is such a diverse sort of group that you've obviously gone with for your sort of main characters there.
Right.
I wondered how intentional it was to obviously try and make each one as sort of individual as possible.
It was very intentional. I wanted people to root for the cast. I wanted people to, worry about whether they're going to live or die. And I wanted to create characters that you would remember. Like, you could remember their names. Maybe you want to dress up as them for Halloween. I wanted to, create that, which I don't see a lot in a lot of horror movies. I can't think of a lot of films where I remember the protagonist's names.
No, sorry. I mean, do you have is there any sort of character that you sort of based on yourself, or anyone that you particularly know?
That's a good question too. Maybe in the feature, there's like some small elements of my own personality in there, but overall, no, these aren't really portrayals of myself.
Right. Well, if people are obviously wanting to get out there and help you reach your total, whereabouts is the best place for them to go and find it?
They go to Kickstarter.com and you just search for Party Slashers, and you should see it right away. And
it's also the one of the Kickstarter staff picks at the moment, so
That's
congratulations for that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Currently, as of the time of recording, it's currently showing that you're on 20,288 of your goal of 35,000.
That's right.
Still plenty of time to go. So, if you obviously like the sound of obviously what we've been describing, the film we've been talking about this evening, Party Slashers, make sure you go and donate some money. It'd be good to see it. I know that you've said that if the Kickstarter campaign falls through, that this isn't the end, that you obviously plan to obviously just try different routes to obviously get the film made.
Absolutely.
So hopefully it won't result to you obviously like doing the Kevin Smith method of credit cards, or the Robert Rodriguez method of subjecting yourself to medical experiments.
Yes, I mean, there was a time and day where quick Kickstarter did not exist, and upcoming directors still went beyond the Call of Duty to get money to make their films.
I mean, obviously with student filmmakers, there are some filmmakers who say that you should take the money you would invest in film school and use that to make your film. And then there's other directors such as Eli Roth who are saying, no, go to film school and make your mistakes there before you obviously try and make your own first feature, because you can make all your mistakes there. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with like a $44,000 pile of crap.
Right.
I mean, did you come up through the film sort of school sort of method, or?
No. Oh, side note, I think Paul Thomas Anderson was the one who said he actually himself he dropped out of film school, I think, and invested his money into his first film. I think that was the name. Anyways, no, I never went to film school actually. I was actually in college when I was first really inspired to get into filmmaking. Unfortunately, I was in my third year of school, so changing my major to film would have been economic suicide. So I like learning things through a hands-on process, So I mean, I started freelancing on a lot of films. I guess my first big gig, I was a production assistant in the art department in a film that was being filmed in Oakland, California, which is a couple hours away from where I was at school. And that was my sort of introduction into, making feature-length movies. And then I really enjoyed it. I mean, the set was awful. It was really disorganized. It was chaotic. People are drinking and getting high on set. People were getting angry, yelling, throwing things. It was pretty surreal, but it was an excellent learning experience. I learned everything that I'm not supposed to do.
It is certainly a good way. I mean, as a director, are you sort of the Kubrick style of director, or you prefer to have are you more of sort of laid back Eli Roth style?
Yeah, I'm very laid back. I'm very receptive to feedback. I love getting everybody's opinions about things, and I like to be liquid when I'm making these productions. But there comes a point where, and I actually learned this the hard way a little bit, is where you have to remember what your vision is. And there comes a point where somebody's going to give you a piece of advice that goes completely against why you're making the film. And you just have to nod your head, smile, and then just continue with your original plan.
I mean, obviously, would you say the horror genre is sort of like one of your personal favorite genres, or is it more just a fun genre to write within?
It's it's a genre I really respect. I can't say that it's my favorite genre, but I really respect it, and I think it's a fantastic genre that needs to exist in cinema. Films need to constantly be made in the horror genre, because I believe the horror genre serves a purpose to its audiences, and actually I feel like helps celebrate life in many ways. I mean, a lot of these films invoke fear and anguish, and they're presented with all sorts of images of death, and then the lights come up and you realize you're still alive, and there's a lot to be thankful for.
I know Eli Roth says that the best date movie you can take a girl to is a horror film.
Yes.
He just says, don't take them to see Love Actually, take them to a horror movie, because you have that sort of intense sort of connection with the audience. Do you feel it's sort of like a genre that you have more of a connection with, say over like a romantic comedy or just a sort of straight comedy?
Yes, I think horror, I do have a stronger connection with it. I think the horror genre is very effective with invoking emotions in me and other audience members, and it gives you sort of a rush, I think. And I think that's why it's really appealing to go out on dates with people to those types of movies, because it creates this sense of exhilaration that can carry over after the movie.
Yeah. I mean, what would you consider to be your personal scariest movie?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. Um, oh man, I'm gonna have trouble answering that. Let's see. I remember when I was really young, I saw the movie The Ring in theater for the very first time, and at this point, I have not seen, or when I saw The Ring, I haven't really seen too many horror movies at that point. And when I saw it, I remember the fear of seeing some of those images I saw on screen. And that carried over to me after I left the theater. Even when I went to bed at night, those images were like plaguing my mind and creating emotions in me that I don't feel a lot. And it was a very memorable experience. And that's when I started, watching a lot of other horror films. The Exorcist, that was a very memorable film. The images in that were quite haunting. And a bunch of others. But yeah, those two come to mind right now.
Yeah. And, I mean, what film would you say is the one that you return to the most?
In terms of horror?
Not just in terms of horror, just films in general. Is there a film that you find yourself constantly returning to, no matter like sort of how many times you've seen it?
Fight Club. Fight Club. Yes, that movie constantly comes to mind. It's just the way that story was told, the message. I really love Fincher's style in his movies. It's very apparent, and I just really connect with that movie. I wish I could put it into words.
I mean, obviously Fight Club came out in '99, which is probably, for myself, one of the golden years of filmmaking when you look at what was released. Certainly for the indie filmmakers, you had Spike Jonze releasing being John Malkovich. You had films like Cruel Intentions, Go coming out, films sort of like the indie, sort of like the more sort of teen market. Cruel Intentions especially being an eye-opener for anyone who was a Buffy fan at the time. But finally, I just have to ask, is there sort of like a guilty pleasure that you have? Any sort of film that's sort of like you're kind of embarrassed to admit that you like it as much as you do?
The first Transformers movie. Just the first one.
Just the first one, not the three that followed.
Yes, exactly. That's my probably my guilty pleasure right there. I mean, okay. I was about to say Team America, but that was actually a very smart film.
I know I can't view Matt Damon movies in the same way since watching Team America. And certainly the interesting thing, before Team America came out, he was doing things like Good Will Hunting, he was doing like Kevin Smith movies, and then Team America comes out and he suddenly decides to become like a serious actor.
Sure.
It was the strangest thing.
I don't know. I haven't seen any interviews where he responds to how he was portraying that film, but I'm pretty sure he gets stopped on the street a lot where people going, Matt Damon. And I think he's a bit of a sensitive guy, so I would imagine he took it to heart, and it was kind of good in a way. It inspired him to do a lot of great films and become a serious actor after that.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of preferred him when he was doing films like Dogma than when he's doing like the Bourne movies or Invictus, where it's sort of like, look, I'm actually acting now. Right. It was certainly a film that upset certain celebrities. Others really sort of liked the way they proceed. The actor from the Shawshank Redemption, can't remember his name now.
Tim Robbins?
Tim Robbins actually wanted his puppet from Team America. He said he wanted the charred and burning puppet to be hanging in his office. I don't know if they arranged it for him or not, but...
Oh, I'm sure they did. I'm sure they were honored to give him that.
And obviously Alec Baldwin, I think, got probably the biggest career boost of his career. Because you can't out-act Alec Baldwin.
No, yeah, it's fantastic. I'm sure most of the actors that were portrayed in that were quite honored to be portrayed in that fashion.
And now this obviously leads us on to the second part of the show, where we look at a film from the Mad, Bad and Downright Obscure list. Obviously, I sent over the list to yourself to select a film from, which you've done. Tonight we are looking at a film which I was very surprised actually that you chose it as one of your examples, and that's the 2010 film Rubber.
Hmm.
For the Rubber is basically a film about Robert, who is a tyre with big dreams, who, having gained life, rolls into the local desert town, while at the same time having the power to make things randomly explode using the supposedly power of his mind. If Taisu. Certainly a unique film. It's from director Quentin Dupleix, who some people may remember more from his musical career as Mr. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Is it Mr. Wazo?
Yeah, Mr. Wazo.
Mr. Wazo, who one of his most memorable tracks obviously being Flat Beat, which gave the world Flat Eric, that yellow puppet that danced along in the Levi adverts and sparked a number of copycat events here in the UK especially, which again unfortunately led to a number of rear endings with people trying to reenact it with various puppets in their car to amuse other road users. But what is it about Rubber that particularly made you want to choose it this evening?
So I think the movie Rubber is grossly misinterpreted by many, and it makes perfect sense. I don't blame them whatsoever. It seems like the reaction of most people who watch that movie, they're really appealed the randomness that was that movie. It didn't seem like there was much of an arc in that film, and another group of people, the majority, I feel like, felt like they were completely treated like idiots. They're completely duped. They thought it was going to be this amazing story about a tire, but a lot of people had trouble understanding what the hell was going on in the story. They just thought it was a series of events that didn't make any sense, which is actually what the sheriff said in the beginning of the film. You can accept stuff for no reason.
He does, because he has that absolutely wonderful quote at the beginning, where he brings up other examples such as why you don't question the color of E.T.'s skin, or the bathroom habits of the cast of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
Again, I never thought of that when watching that movie, that what they were doing in the bathroom, but apparently it was quite important to him to obviously stress this. Because at the start, he actually advises you not to question what you're seeing. I mean, would you say that's the best advice of approach this movie, not to question anything you're watching?
I feel like best movies, do that without even having to make that request of you. I mean, the fact that you're sitting there, you're watching the movie, that's testament right there that you're not questioning stuff. You're going to accept what's happening on the screen. This film, though, I mean, I feel like, even Quentin Dupieux, he even says, like, it's just a bunch of random stuff I thought of. There's no serious explanation there. I kind of think he's full of shit.
I mean,
I think he's.
Yeah, it's. I think most people, the trailer will be enough for them.
Right.
The full-length film won't give them anything that the trailer won't have given them already.
Yes, I'd agree with you there. I feel like what's happening in this movie, though, I feel like Dupieux is making one huge metaphor on how the current climate in Hollywood filmmaking is right now, actually. And I feel like a lot of people, if they don't, follow the business, keep up with the latest news, knows what goes on behind the scenes, a lot of these points he makes, a lot of these metaphors he makes, they kind of go over people's heads, But anyways, I wrote down this huge list of like a bunch of points in the movie that maybe come back to this huge metaphor for Hollywood filmmaking.
Okay.
So first off, the fact that you're watching a movie about a killing tire reinforces that, you'll accept stuff for no reason. It's funny that they named the tire Robert, which is a lengthier version of the word Bob, which is pretty much a telltale sign of a writer who's putting no thought process into the character's name, in my opinion. But I feel like the tire itself represents the randomness that you'll accept because you're watching a movie, and it also might represent two-dimensional characters that make no sense, but you believe it anyways because you're sitting there, you've invested in watching the movie, so you go with it. In the beginning, you're introduced to that the guy with glasses who's holding all those binoculars in his hands, and he's giving them out to people. And I feel like that guy is the metaphor of a Hollywood producer. To me, he's interacting with the audience. He's providing the medium for them to view the movie, and he treats his audience like shit, pretty much.
Yes, it's an unusual thing because you're obviously watching the film, so you've got the main story with the tyre robber who's going around randomly killing people and at one scene stalking a girl as best a tyre can.
Right.
And then you're cutting constantly back to this group of people watching it through the binoculars.
Right.
And I've heard people say, oh, they're a representation of how stupid you are as the audience.
Right. And to a degree, that's probably true. I think there's a lot more details in that, though. First off, I really like the interaction between the producer and the audience. Like I said before, he treats them like shit. He keeps them waiting. He has them sit out in the desert, all uncomfortable. They're cold. They have to sleep out there. He wakes them up by hitting them with his briefcase and kicking them. And then, when the audience is starving, they need to eat, he goes ahead and he just drops a turkey carcass on the ground, on the dirt, and just lets them all, just eat it like savages.
It's because it's a poisoned turkey for some reason.
Yes.
I don't know what he was trying to achieve by killing the audience. But there's a lot of things which I think you're best off just sort of accepting. In a way, it sort of felt like a throwback to Daft Punk's Electrorama, which again was a film which was just random and didn't seem to make any sense at all. And in some ways, it also reminds me of like the films of Michel Gondry, like Science of Sleep or Greg Araki's Nowhere, both which have. They feel like they've got sort of like a plot thread that they're following, but there's a lot of random sort of things happening, but not in sort of that same sort of surreal, sort of dreamlike way that David Lynch would approach the sort of the material. It's sort of that you're sort of following a plot line and strange things are happening around you.
I feel like when a filmmaker's making a movie, it seems like there's a bunch of random stuff happening. I still feel like the filmmaker is trying to communicate something that's going on in his head. There's some sort of message, whether he realizes or not, that he's expressing to other people. He or she is expressing to other people. And, it's easy to write it off as completely random gibberish when you haven't had time to really reflect on why you're doing what you're doing in a film. But I think, a lot of these directors, I imagine if they reflect more on the film, they think about it at night, eventually they can come up with some sort of explanation for why they did that. Why did they choose to shoot it that way? Yada, yada, yada. And also, to back up, actually, with the turkey thing, remember the producer, he decides to kill that turkey in his motel room because he got a phone call from somebody who's introduced as the master, who he calls the master. And I feel like the master is a representation of studios. And remember, the audience is hanging out in the desert. They're starving. They need to feed on something, need to eat something. I believe that is a metaphor for people starving for new content, something that they could just consume viciously and then just move on to the next thing. So the master finally made the decision, like, okay, they're ready for that turkey. And he poisons it, and he gives it to them. The audience is poisoned, and I feel like that's Hollywood's way of duping the audience member. You hype them up, you get this huge marketing campaign going saying, here's the next big thing, it's going to be such a great movie, and then you drop Transformers 3 on them. And then everybody just goes, oh my God, why? And I think one of the people getting poisoned even said, like, why would you do this? Or was it, how could you treat his audience like this? I think that's what she says, and just think, it's like Indiana Jones 4, or, I don't know, Star Wars prequels. I wasn't a fan of those.
I mean, Indiana Jones 4 is just a whole new level of awful. And it again, there were so many bits of it I enjoyed, but then you have bits like the monkeys. And it's like, what the hell is this? I mean, I was happy to, like, dust over the whole escape via the fridge part, but when it just had the monkeys, it was sort of like. And I think in a way that the problem with this film is that it has this killer trailer, and you think that it's going to really build upon this idea. We're going to see like a really sort of interesting sort of serial killer movie, but with a unique sort of killer in the form of this killer tyre.
Right.
But it doesn't seem to go anywhere. It just basically just gives you a longer version of the trailer in many ways. Sorry, Karen.
I feel like the story is more about the audience than it is the tyre. You know, I feel like the tyre is just sort of like I don't know if I want to say plot device, but just something that helps describe the story of the audience. I think that's who we should be paying attention to. You know, so after everybody's poisoned, you know, the sheriff, he goes and tells, you know, the other cops, you know, it's like, it's okay, we can pack up, we can finish this, it's over. We don't have to, you know, keep on doing this. And then, you know, all the other cops are just like, what are you talking about? This is a murder scene. We have to investigate it. We have to obtain evidence, blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, it's over. There's no audience. There's nobody watching, you know. And I think he shoots himself at one point, or he has somebody shoot him just to let people know it's not real. And I feel like his team, you know, the forensics guys, the cops, the deputies, I feel like that was the cast. And that the sheriff was the director. Yeah. He was saying, pack up, go home, it's over. You know, the audience has been duped, they're gone. And I feel like the cast they've been so emotionally invested in their roles. They have made it their own. You know, they make it so real so they can do their job right. And it's just, I feel like it's so hard. I mean, I don't act, but I just imagine it's so hard. You've been doing something for so long. You've emulated that character for so long. It's just so hard to just turn it off like that sometimes, I think. You know, I feel like that's something a lot of actors battle with, you know, trying to figure out, you know, what their true reality is, and like, where does the character stop and where does their own actual life begin? You know, I mean, I'm sure a lot of actors will debate that with me. It's just, you know, a philosophy that I'm constantly building on.
And the thing which really caught me off guard is that there's a feeling that he didn't, when Duplass is obviously making this film, that he didn't seem to have an idea what he was doing. He was sort of shooting all this sort of random footage, especially at the end. It just sort of comes out of nowhere. I don't think I've seen an ending as sudden since Big Man Japan, which again just goes from very sort of lighthearted sort of play on the Keiju movies to just suddenly this live action scene which is just incredibly brutal and so mean spirited. And I think again, Rubber's the only other time I've been suddenly sort of taken out of a movie by the ending just coming so sudden. I mean, do you think he had a plan, or was it sort of like just to see what we could basically make the audience go along with?
You know what I notice a lot of writers have a problem with is figure out a good third act. You know, they have such a good story that I've built on. They've, you know, created all these, you know, arcs and plot points and stuff. And then a lot of writers, I feel like they have to figure out, how are we going to end this thing? I don't know how we're going to do it. And you see a lot of random endings out of this, you know. The most recent example I can think of is This Is the End. You know, I was listening to an interview with Seth Rogen and his writing partner, Goldberg, I can't remember his last name. And they were saying, when they wrote that script, they didn't know how to end it, you know. And honestly, I think they never were able to come up with a good ending, because what we see, they all, I'm sorry if I'm spoiling this for anybody, it's not really a big twist, but they go to heaven and they're happy the Backstreet Boys are there, and, you know, they smoke a joint and they dance to Backstreet Boys, you know. And I felt like everybody was looking at each other in the theater like, you know, what the fuck is this? Okay, Backstreet Boys, you know, golf clap for that, but it was not ending. And I don't know, maybe Depew thought that, like, he successfully told a story, and now he just needs to end it. You know, he's at he's at that 90-minute mark of the runtime, and he has to end the story.
So you actually managed to figure out an ending for, obviously, Party Slasher. We're not going to stem with like the Backstreet Boys turning up in Party Slashers then.
No. With this ending, I mean, really, the story, the intrinsic story behind Party Slashers is about a boy. It's a coming-of-age tale, really, of a boy who just realized that he threw away such a valuable friendship that he had with Russell for a false pursuit of happiness, which is Heather. That's his love interest, and he's changed his whole persona trying to pursue Heather's acceptance, get Heather to like him, basically. And really, this is just his pathway to realizing the truth.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the character of Robert is Robert the Tyre is sort of pivotal within the film. Certainly in his hands, it reminded me a lot of the alien from Dark Star.
The alien from what?
From Dark Star. It's basically a beach ball on legs, if you've not seen it. And it doesn't speak. It doesn't do much apart from bounce around and sort of wiggle its feet. But there is so much character with this beach ball. And again, I found it with Robert, even though he has no way of communicating or expressing emotions, you still feel that you're getting a sense of what the Tyre's thinking, such as when he's sort of stalking the girl, gets rejected, and then throws himself in the pool.
Right. Yeah, that is a good point. There are some interesting, actions that he does, which I find really interesting. And then, I don't know, it seems like towards the end of the movie, where you find him, he just went into some random person's house, he killed everybody, and he's watching NASCAR. And then, he gets blown up, and then he turns into a tricycle.
Yes, the ending where it's Robert and the other Tyres that are heading to Hollywood.
Yes, and I feel like, it's like in the movie, when Robert dies, it's just his character that died. But everything Robert represented is translated into another form. And there's several copycat Tyres that are, following his lead. And they're all invading Hollywood. All these a horde of two-dimensional characters just waiting to dupe audiences with future films.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, do you have anything else that you want to discuss about Robert, or do you think we've covered it there?
Oh, there was one thing too. There was that one audience member who wouldn't eat the turkey. He wanted to see what was going to happen in this story. Everybody's all confused. They eat the turkey, they die. But this one guy held out. He's like, no, he wants his movie. He wants his story. And, when the sheriff was telling all the other cops, go home, it's over, the producer comes up to him and says, hey, we still have one audience member who didn't eat the turkey. And the sheriff's just like, oh, God, we got to continue the story. Fine, let's do it. And I feel like that guy who held out, he is a representation of the audience that enjoys watching a lot of these crap films and wants to see more. They make these shitty movies profitable to the point where later installments are made because of it.
I mean,
like Transformers movies, I'm surprised, they still keep getting made, but, they make lots and lots and lots of money. So, and I feel like a lot of these audience members are that guy who didn't eat the turkey.
There's always room for giant robots fighting each other.
True. Yes, there always is. You're right.
I mean, would you like to see Rubber 2, the Tyre Takes Hollywood, or you think we've sort of got our fill of giant killer Tyres with Rubber?
I would only watch Rubber 2 just to see if it continued to support my theory of Rubber 1.
Okay. And to wrap up, further viewing. If you like Rubber, what would you recommend watching next?
If you liked Rubber, what would you like watching next? I would have to say Hobo with a Shotgun.
Oh, good choice.
There's a lot more lot more personality in that movie, but a lot of random things that happening, and it's definitely a piece of fun that you should watch with a friend.
Yeah, and Hobo the Shotgun, one of the better things to come out of the whole Grindhouse fiasco.
Yes.
And a film I would love to see followed up. I know that they were talking about doing a sequel with The Plague, who were probably one of the more interesting characters in that film.
Yes, I would love to see that. And even Hobo with the Shotgun even features a few tracks with the artist Power Glove, based in Australia, who actually did one of the tracks for Party Slashers.
Okay. And we should obviously your soundtrack. It seems like he's got a very sort of electro 80s sort of theme.
Yes.
Is that what we can expect from the soundtrack?
Yes, you can expect a lot more of that. I love the music. I discovered it recently, and I want to use it as sort of like a throwback to the golden age of the slasher genre. And I think people have a lot of fun with it. It'll definitely be a huge deviation to what they usually hear in horror movies to make it a fun ride.
Yeah, that's good. For myself, if you enjoy horror, the first one which would come to mind would be another film by Dupree, which is Ron Cobb's, which is a future sort of set film where a bunch of crooked cops looking to dispose of a body that one of them has accidentally shot. More interesting for the fact it does feature Marilyn Manson as a cop.
Very cool.
Again, if you like rubber, there's a feeling of it being more of the same. Failing that, I would definitely recommend watching some from Gregor Arki's back catalogue. Nowhere being a suitable introduction from sort of the harder films such as the Doom Generation, which are a little harder to stomach. But thank you very much. I'd like to say thank you very much, Carl, for coming on and talking about Party Slashers. Obviously, I'm urging everyone to go and check out the test footage on the Kickstarter page. The link you can find in the section below. Is there anything you would like to add, really, before we wrap this up then tonight, Carl?
No, just check out the page. Hopefully you like it. Thanks for having me, Elwood.
Oh, thank you for coming on. So this wraps up another edition of the Mad, Bad and Downright Strange Showcase. Until next time, this is Elwood Jones signing off and inviting you all to keep it strange.